When the American people are asked what worries them most, what are the issues and problems that they most want to know about, it always gets down to the economy, their economic reality, and a deteriorating economic condition. How is our media covering these problems, and how well are they doing? To find out about that, we decided to ask an economist about media. What does he read, and what should we know? I'm Danny Schechter, your news dissector, editor of MediaChannel.org. We'll meet Rick Wolff. You're an emeritus professor at the University of Massachusetts in economics. You teach at the New School. You're a prolific author. You've written the book, Democracy is the Cure for Capitalism. Capitalism Hits the Fan was a series of lectures you gave. And you also wrote a book on Occupy. So you've been very busy writing about economics. What is it about economics that seems to be the subject? They used to call it, what was it, the dismal science. What is it that keeps people from engaging with economic issues?
Well, it used to be that the way it was taught in the universities, and this is basically true since the Second World War, was so abstract, so technical, that it really drove away all the young people who came to the classroom wanting to understand why some people are rich and some people are poor, why the big things about economics that shook their families were happening. But they didn't get that. Instead, they got a kind of engineering course which they didn't want, which didn't seem to speak to what they were interested in. And so we have a generation of people who were interested in economics but driven away. And what they left behind was technical people. The Larry Summers of this world, if you want to be blunt, who know how to do the equations and the technique, but don't really understand how the larger economy works.
You'd think there's a big market for news about the economy. We have business channels, CNBC, CNN is out there with lots of business programs, the Wall Street Journal, et al., and so forth. And yet, are the American people really learning very much from the news they consume about the economy?
No, they don't learn hardly anything. The level of what we call economic literacy in the United States is stunningly low, lower than in most other countries. What passes for economic news is really, as you put it, business news. It's mostly designed to appeal to people who've made an investment or two, who are wondering what's going to happen to the stock market because they look at their 401k plan. But it's not about teaching the average person what's happening in the larger economy. That's why when they talk about things in the larger economy, it's very fragmentary. It's a little bit here, a little bit there, doesn't hang together. And over time, the public kind of listens with half an ear and then no ear.
We're talking now on the anniversary, they say, of the financial crisis of 2008. I think it started in 2007, but never mind. Yet the media really didn't prepare us for this crisis. In fact, financial institutions were advertising in the media, and the media correspondingly was not really analyzing financial institutions.
Absolutely. I mean, and there again, let me connect the media to the economics profession, because increasingly media are hiring folks from the economics profession to help them figure out what they should be doing. The profession had no idea this was supposed to come, this crisis. They actually believed that we had figured out from the last great crisis in the Great Depression of the 30s how to manage things so this wouldn't happen again. So nobody was prepared. The media weren't prepared, nor are the media prepared to handle the crisis as it evolves, nor are they willing to welcome different perspectives, because we don't agree in economics and we never have. But the media would like to present this as a technical question that they can ask somebody and get a simple answer.
Isn't it a little bit like sports reporting? All they want to know is the score. They don't really go much deeper into certainly not into the business of sports, certainly not into who owns it and controls it and how that might affect what we see and don't see.
Right, you're either interested just in the score, like did the market go up or down, or interest rates higher or lower, or maybe if you have a bit more interest, you want to learn about the personal sex life of the ball player or something. But yeah, to understand the larger picture of what this sport is and what sport is in America, no, you'd have to go someplace else. The media are not going to give it to you.
Now, you and I both wrote books about Occupy. We were very impressed by the spirit of that movement, in part because it was raising this whole question of who rules our economy, 99% or the 1%. And yet that's not a question you see addressed in the media, is it?
Never. Never, until Occupy put it on the map. Not the least of the achievements of Occupy, whatever criticisms one has, not the least of their achievements was to put in the center of the table for discussion who runs this economy? Who does the economy serve? I mean, the courage to do that, not to shrink back. Having been told by so many of the usual pundits, it's not good in America to raise questions about capitalism or who runs the show because no one wants to hear that. Occupy ignored the advice, put it front and center, and changed the whole nature of the conversation in America. It's amazing.
This whole notion of who runs the economy is often obscured because the people who run the economy are financing the programming about the economy. In other words, advertisements for financial institutions, loan companies, and the like were going up dramatically as predatory lending was going up.
Sure. I mean, look, if you have an economy, just as Occupy told us, if you have an economy where the 1% run the show, they're not stupid. If you're 1% and the 99% feeling more and more that they're being screwed, you're in danger that the 99% will use the power of numbers, particularly in a country which votes, to undo by political action what has been done to them in the economy. So they have to control people's consciousness, and one of the ways you do that is control media. The whole world of economics was amazed at what happened a few weeks ago when one millionaire bought the Boston Globe and another millionaire bought the Washington Post within the same week. It was a wonderful demonstration of who's calling the shots. We've been saying that the big business has bought the politicians. What's now clear is they also have bought the media because they need to control those things. Otherwise, the 1% can't be secure in staying on top.
At the same time, there is a need to teach people about the economy, educate them about them. I was really impressed with your R.D. Wolff website where you actually have your courses on economics available to anybody who's interested, your reading lists and everything else. But how do we popularize these issues for the public at large? Are you impressed with any groups that are trying to do that online or in the media itself?
Yes, I think what we have in the United States now, with the internet particularly, is the opportunity for the voices that were literally pushed off the stage to come back in. Not center stage yet, but to come back in and be part of the national conversation. Even some of the larger critical programs on television in the United States, for example, and in other countries, have brought voices like mine now forward because the audience for them is enormous. I mean, there's all this publicity about the Tea Party and the right, but my experience as a critic of capitalism has been that in the last 2 to 3 years, my audiences have grown exponentially. I've never seen anything like it. I was active in the 60s. It was nothing like the audience and the sympathy of the audience that I now encounter.
I think sometimes if you know what questions to ask, you can extract information from organizations that actually want to keep you uninformed.
Absolutely. If you push at them, if you provoke them, if you ask them the difficult questions, particularly in the United States, where they haven't been in that situation for so long, that whatever the defensive mechanisms one could have, they don't have them yet. They'll probably get them. But for the time being, you're absolutely right. They're not ready. And when I debate them, I can see that I could write a better answer to what I'm saying for them than they can come up with themselves.
For example, I was reading the Yahoo Finance site, okay? And they have a little box there, who owns companies. So you click the box, and you put in a media company. And suddenly you find out that the media company is being owned by a financial company. That in fact the finance capitalists, the Wall Street people, are actually owning and controlling most of the media. Hence, they tend to get a very favorable write-up generally in the media.
Of course, because the bankers sat around, they couldn't believe what was happening in 2007, 8, and 9. They had brought the United States, particularly in the anniversary we're talking about, in the last 4 months of 2008, to the brink of a collapse. not an abstract collapse, a collapse where the trains stop running and the grocery stores are empty, that kind of collapse. They brought us that close. And so everybody was mad at them for doing that. Then they made sure that the bailouts of the government went first and foremost to them, who had brought the crisis. And everybody was angry at them. And then they used part of the money they got as bailout to give themselves the usual enormous bonuses. And then the level of popular rage against them was intense, and they began to realize this could hurt. It could push through a Dodd-Frank bill in the Congress that controlled them, at least a little. And they realized they have to, in order to run this society as they do, they have to control people's awareness of what's going on. It is 1984, pretty well worked out, with the financial folks in a very prominent position.
Danny Schechter, your news dissector, editor of MediaChannel.org here. Once you start debating and talking with R.D. Wolff, Rick Wolff, the economist who teaches at the New School and has taught in Massachusetts and writes all these very provocative books, you can't just boil it down to a 10-minute segment. So we're going to stop here, and we're going to come back next time with more with Rick Wolff. Stay with us on that, and you'll appreciate it. Trust me.